Revival Memphis, the Memphis in May founder story, is brought to you by Mary Schooner and Jason Schooner, in memory of Joe Schooner. Revival Memphis, the Memphis in May founder story, is sponsored by Cushman Wakefield Commercial Advisors. Also sponsored by Denise Bolheimer, Katie and Tom Hutton, and Lyman D. Aldrich.
Memphis is one of the most exciting cities in the world. Frommer's travel guide just named Memphis one of the best places to go in 2019. CNN Travel named Memphis #1 in its list of the 5 best places to go in the world in the month of May. And why not? It's the home of the blues, soul, and birthplace of rock and roll. It's the distribution capital of planet Earth, the world headquarters of FedEx, the home of the nation's innkeeper, the city where Holiday Inns took off and transformed the hotel business worldwide. Memphis is the city that gave rise to the world's first supermarket, Piggly Wiggly. Our city is also known as the cotton and hardwood capital of the world. A survey of 9,000 high-achieving high school and college students, as well as young professionals, recently named Memphis-based St. Jude Children's Research Hospital as America's #1 dream employer, taking the top spot from Google. Stax Museum of American Soul attracts music lovers from across the planet, and the place where the blues was born, Beale Street, has become Tennessee's #1 tourist attraction. Well, hello once again for Revival Memphis, the Memphis in May founder's story, the story of our founders of the Memphis in May International Festival that started in 1977 and has had such a powerful impact on the history of Memphis, Tennessee, celebrating its 200th birthday in 2019. We are thrilled to have with us perhaps the greatest expert on the modern Memphis economy who is living today, Dr. John Gnushke, who is the director of the Sparks Bureau of Economic Research at the Fogelman College of Business at the University of Memphis. Dr. Gnushke, thanks for being with us.
Thank you, Joe.
What a treat to have you here. You came with your PhD from the University of Missouri way back in 1976, the bicentennial year when America was celebrating its 200th birthday. That's been a few 24 hours ago.
More than a few. More than a few.
And here we are in Memphis celebrating the bicentennial, looking forward to a new century of soul as the marketers are talking about the next century ahead. But we're focusing now on this program today on the significance of Memphis in May. And just for a moment, let's get into the now and talk about what's happening in the Memphis economy right now. When you see what's going on, what are you seeing?
I see a very positive economic environment. Okay, I see an environment that's been driven by basically 8 years or 9 years of pretty rapid economic growth. I see an economy that's globalized, where we're talking about global issues and where global issues impact the city of Memphis. I see corporations that are reaching out across the world to seek customers and deliver goods and services that we never would have anticipated back in 1976.
Mm-hmm. And so let's dial back the hands of time back to that mid-1970s era, where it's just after the tragic assassination of the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. And the suburbanization movement is happening across America, not just in Memphis, but across America. Companies and retailers are moving out of the downtown center cities area, going to the suburbs. And downtown Memphis is truly suffering, right?
Well, absolutely. We had little or no future at that time. We were struggling to identify where we were going and how we were ever going to get there. We had the police and fire strike that we shouldn't forget. Okay, tremendous setback for the city, and we had other things. And most of all, we lacked a vision. We didn't know where we were going. We didn't know how we were going to get there, and we didn't know who was going to drive us there.
So this group of young 30-somethings at that time started to gather, bright young people who wanted to have a vision of a better Memphis. And a conversation began with these founders who we've been visiting with on this program here on your library channel for the last few months here in 2019. and they started dreaming about the Beale Street Music Festival. And it made a lot of sense. It makes a lot of sense today. Obviously, music is one of our main selling points in Memphis, but it wasn't that obvious in 1977, was it?
Well, it was obvious that we had a musical history, but it wasn't obvious that we could build anything around it because we couldn't pull together. We weren't working together. And Memphis in May is one of the examples of pulling the community together for an event that became bigger than life. It became more important. Visualizing Memphis, Tennessee without a Memphis in May just doesn't seem to exist, okay? I don't know what you'd do in May in Memphis if it weren't for Memphis in May.
Mm-hmm. Well, these young people got together and they dreamed up the barbecue. And obviously, we have a lot of barbecue restaurants in the mid-1970s in town, and barbecue is one of our fortes in culinary excellence, but it wasn't the internationally known product that it is today, where around the world, when you say Memphis, people say, I want to come here and have some barbecue. And that's largely because people understand this is the world headquarters of the International Barbecue Cooking Contest every month in the month of May.
Well, it certainly isn't in May, okay? But barbecue's a big deal. It became a big deal partly as a result of this. But it was probably going to be a big deal anyway. Our global companies like FedEx, AutoZone, International Paper, all of our hospitals, even our universities have become tremendously global and all that really has occurred since 1976. It had nothing to do with me, but it had a lot to do with the community and how it was changing.
Mm-hmm. You're a living witness to all this, as perhaps our greatest living economic expert who has been studying the Memphis economy since you arrived here in 1976, and you saw that downtown was dead in the water at that time and struggling and trying to find an identity to reinvent itself as it was increasingly blighted and increasingly abandoned. And then these young people came up with this festival, and it invited the community, which had largely abandoned downtown, to come on back to the river and take a look and see this is a great place. Tom Lee Park is an outstanding venue for a party, and you were a witness to what happened as Memphis in May became a catalyst for what came next.
Well, I was a witness, and I'm glad to be alive to tell the story. The truth is that our downtown was going nowhere. The city was going nowhere. It had no future. And then it began to change, okay? Memphis in May was a critical part of changing the future of the city. It evolved just like our companies evolved, except more rapidly. It focused on Japan as in '77 as its first featured country. And if you can think back about the 70s and the 80s, those were time periods in which Japan was a global powerhouse, an economic powerhouse that was buying and selling things all over this country and just as fast as they could do it. Just-in-time inventory, which was a precursor of all of the warehouse and industrial businesses we have now, came about as a result of Japanese production processes and the ideas that came from Japan. So there were lots of things that have changed as a result of even the simplest thing like Memphis in May, which pulled hundreds of thousands, if not, well, in fact, millions of people over the years to the downtown riverfront. Those people would not have been down there, okay? We would not have seen the change in the downtown area that we've seen, except for the fact that we began to change the image of downtown. It became a place to be. At least for 1 month a year, it became the place to be. And it was downtown, and it was a place that think about living, okay? Wasn't in the past. A place to think about relocating your business which we've seen that's occurring every day. Okay, it changed the whole community's vision of what downtown Memphis could be.
And the people who are our founders, who we're enjoying recollecting all of this with here in Revival Memphis, the Memphis in May Founders Story, want to create a curriculum to help people in diverse cultures unite and come together. Just like Memphis was not exactly united in 1977, this was an integrated group of young Memphians who united around one table and just enjoyed each other's company and celebrated our city and brainstormed and came up with ideas. And they think this could be a curriculum that could help diverse communities that are struggling unite. You agree?
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's essential. It's essential. Our future is going to be, how do we play a part in a global economy? Not just a U.S. economy, but a global economy. How does Memphis play a part? And one of the ways it plays a part is you educate your children, okay, to recognize there's something out there beyond the borders, okay? There's a whole world out there of opportunities and income and enjoyment and growth and involvement and all of the wonderful things that you gain from an international exposure. And some of that happens directly as a result of our education process. We can begin to change those processes, then in fact we begin to see a change in our environment. Memphis in May's played a critical role in that.
Mm-hmm. You were quoted, and our founder emeritus, Lyman Aldrich, likes to quote you a lot because this is a great quote. Memphis in May is the most positive event that happens year in and year out in Memphis. Memphis in May brought confidence back to the city, and how important that was at the time, speaking of 1977 and the late 70s and 80s. And you went on to say, I would hate to see what Memphis would be without Memphis in May. That's the John Gnushke quote that Lyman likes to use.
Well, it's a good one, okay, and I'm not sure why I thought of it, but in fact, it's absolutely true. Memphis in May is a catalyst. It's a change agent. It changes not only the economy. It's important. The economic effects are tremendous. We bring 100,000 people basically a year to the riverfront from out of town. And 100,000 people is a lot of people, and that's critically important. It's $35 million to $40 million in spending every year, just direct spending, and it generates $4 to $5 million in tax revenues as a result of that spending from visitors out of town. It's an important economic injection, but the real importance is it changes the image of our city to something that's positive, okay? It's music-oriented, which is terrific, but it's also education-oriented, as we know, okay? It does things that go beyond simply dollars and cents. It's so important that we recognize that would FedEx have expanded here? Would AutoZone have located here? Would International Paper have located here? Those are big success stories in the history of the 40 years of the Memphis economy. Those are big success stories, and the key is that maybe they would have, maybe they wouldn't have. But certainly Memphis in May helps support a focus on global economic activity.
All right. Dr. John, thank you so much. Dr. John Gnushke, the director of the Sparks Bureau of Economic Research at the Fogelman College of Business at the University of Memphis. Thanks for being with us today. We could go on for a couple of hours, I think, but unfortunately we have to take the time now to shift gears, and we are blessed to have with us Dr. Mose Yvonne Brooks-Hooks, who was the key player in bringing the educational component to the founders of Memphis in May International Festival way back starting in 1977, and what a dramatic impact she's had on the lives of our students all throughout the former Memphis City Schools, Shelby County Schools, and many other institutions. Stay tuned, friends. We'll be right back. We are in the presence of someone truly special, dressed in her resplendent red here on the Library Channel set today. A young lady who was raised by teachers, her father a Methodist minister, both her parents teachers. She was raised in Jackson, Tennessee, and then attended Fisk University. In junior year of college, went to the Sorbonne in Paris, graduated from Fisk, went on to Columbia University in New York City, received her master's in French, so she was a global citizen by then and speaking a foreign language. And then, after marrying, went to the University of Tennessee and received her PhD in general education and in French, and has been a force in education in the Memphis, Tennessee community for many, many decades now. We are thrilled to have with us Dr. Mose Yvonne Brooks-Hooks here today on the Revival Memphis, the Memphis in May Founders Story. Welcome.
Thank you.
So you were the one who came at the invitation of Harold Shaw and George Brown, two prominent Memphis African-American leaders who had been invited by Lyman, Aldrich, and others to attend the Memphis in May International Festival early board meetings. And they said, we must bring Mose Yvonne because why?
Well, they understood that how I felt about education. And they also understood, I do believe, that it's important what your young are learning about the future in foreign countries. Has a lot to do with the success
That's right.
of any program.
So Memphis in May International Festival does have that international component. And so when you were invited to the party and everybody's brainstorming, you brought to the table this idea of why not celebrate the culture of our honored country each year. And so what did you tell the assembled group of young Memphis in May leaders?
Well, there's no future unless the young are learning. And so it's very, very important that if we're going to honor a foreign country, it's important that we teach and give experiences to our young people. And the internationals felt that way too, because when the ambassadors came over, when the dance troupes came over, they were just so elated and excited when they were visiting the schools to see what are your young learning about us. Because all of us are going to pass away. And that was very, very important, and that is what Memphis in May decided to do, and asked me to go to the Board of Education. We wanted to do it right. So we went directly to the Board of Education and met before the school board. I can remember Mrs. Frances Cole, one of the great leaders in education here. And we made I made the motion, and they agreed to let us enter. And a Mr. George Clark, who was over the elementary education, it was put under his program. And that's how it began, and it moved through all the schools and the principals and the teachers, and that's how the kids learned, and that's how we moved education of Memphis in May through the school system.
Well, the first year the honored country was Japan.
Yes.
And so in 1977, at the very outset of what we now understand as the Memphis in May International Festival, you started the curriculum with your collaborators in the Memphis City schools and Shelby County schools to share the culture of Japan with our students, right?
Yes, we did.
In elementary and middle school.
Yes, we did. And we had people in the community. They gave materials and books to the libraries, etc. So everybody got involved with that particular country, the parents, all the teachers, and at least in the elementary schools at first. But we eventually moved on up to the high schools, because the high school students had programs also, because eventually they took students, and they're still doing that, to the honor country that we have been honoring every year.
Well, it's a beautiful component of the Memphis in May story. To enlighten the minds of young people about the cultures that they might not otherwise have had the opportunity to experience, especially in a direct way. So what were the experiences and the attitudes of the dignitaries and the dance troupes and the international guests when they visited the schools and the colleges and University of Memphis under your leadership and through the Memphis in May program?
Well, we would always spend a day to take the internationals, whether it was an ambassador, whether it was the dance troops, whether it was just visitors, through schools. And when they saw what the children learned, because they had displays in the libraries, they had books and materials that had been presented to them, and the parents brought them, or someone gave that school material. In addition to that, they would have maybe a presentation, etc. They even went to the daycare center at Shelby State Community College at that particular time, and the children had learned a dance from that country and all, and that was the most important thing. And I can remember very well the ambassador said, what your children are learning about us is the most important thing about this festival.
Isn't that wonderful?
Because that's the future.
And so you've seen this bear fruit.
Oh, yes.
You've been a witness to this now through all these 40-plus years, since 1977 to present. Here we are in 2019, and you can see that there's fruit for the labor. Could you share some of that?
Well, I've known students to major in foreign languages in high schools and in colleges because of their experiences with Memphis in May. I've known some that now have jobs that when they were able to do the internships in business, etc., that they would choose a foreign country, maybe to go to South America, etc., to do the internships in business and in other areas. I've seen some that have gone there and lived. I've seen some that are married. So it has just spread throughout their lives.
Well, here we are in 2019 in a global economy, and perhaps it's never more important that Memphis and cities of Memphis size, cities like Memphis, have a global point of view. And thanks to Memphis in May and the enriching curriculum that you helped introduce way back starting in 1977, and then every year there was an honored country, whether it was Germany or the Netherlands or whatever country the group decided to honor that year. These young people became aware of a world far beyond Shelby County and West Tennessee. And we can see now that it is an incredibly rich rewards for doing that. Because look what we have. In downtown Memphis, we have FedEx now, perhaps our largest global local corporation, thinking about moving FedEx Logistics downtown. We have, of course, International Paper out east, AutoZone, and so many other international players like St. Jude Children's Research Hospital, which has become a global, truly St. Jude Global is a worldwide organization now. And many Memphis young people benefited from your wisdom way back in the day, as we say.
Well, I think so, and thanks to Memphis in May that they opened up their program, their agenda, to include this aspect, because it was kind of new to some of the people who were maybe just volunteers, adults who were volunteer. So I think that it was foresight. And when you mix the business and the education and you put it all together and you understand that we are one large community. Just listen to the news now and listen to all the global things that are going on now. And as a result, it is because we have introduced a new concept, a new idea. And I think this started with education, that education is a center of the world. And I think we need to understand that in order to understand how we're going to even live now and be successful as a city and as a country.
Well, explain in your thinking now the future of international education program for Memphis in May as you perceive it. It is not what it once was at this point. What do you think it could be? What would you like to see happen?
I would love to see more students having an opportunity to go and study and travel abroad. I think they could start is definitely at the high school level. I think the universities should, and I think some are. But I think it should be larger groups of students who will go over. I think parents. I think that churches. I just think the total community. And now, then you'd be surprised at how many young people, just because of many internationals come over here and study at our universities, they meet them, they marry them, they are part, so they are already international. And now we have people that are right here involved with Memphis in May, our leaders in the community, their children are already international because they are involved with someone in that foreign country. So I think it's already happening, that we may not want to identify, we may not want to bring it to the forefront. But when you start talking and you go to the stores and you go to the shopping centers and you go to the gas station, you go to the churches, there they sit. And so I think that when we do that, maybe there's some of the issues that we're dealing with as a country that are international issues, they won't be so foreign to us because we all are one.
Could you just share briefly what your involvement in Memphis in May, in your life, how rich a component of this story in your own life has been?
Well, as a teacher and as an educator and an administrator, a teacher shares and directs and gives and helps. And I really think, without even mentioning that on a daily basis, that I have helped young people. I get letters every day. It was a young man I can remember in one of the universities, and he wanted to go and study. I said, well, look at the bulletin board. He said, but all the paper is jammed up on the bulletin board. Dr. Hooks, there's nothing on the bulletin board. I said, go and look. And there, one of the large companies in the United States had an opportunity for him to study at Columbia, New York, and gave him so much money that he goes every summer and he studied in the foreign country. And next thing I knew, he graduated and he is now living over in the foreign country. And they write you and they tell you about their experiences, etc. So I just think more of us, and don't be afraid, because it's nothing that's really happening that would be negative if they have the right chaperones, etc., like Memphis in May. We send 2 chaperones every year with their children over there to study and to look at the environment and to look at, visit the classes and so forth. We have to do it because it's one world now. I don't care how we look at it. I don't care how we look. I don't care how we think. It's one world. And until we accept that, you know, and so I think Memphis has really, because I have so many friends that come here, just because of how Memphis has led this agenda as it relates to international environment, international studies, travel, and so forth. And I think that we don't give ourselves as much credit as we should about how we have, as a city, and as people in a city, have led the international understanding of the world. And so I think we need to kind of do a little more to promote ourselves on that, because more people come in here that are not necessarily with FedEx and those large companies. They're just regular people.
Yes.
I have friends that come from all over the United States, come in to Memphis in May.
Well, thank you, Dr. Mose Yvonne Brooks Hooks, who was one of the founders of Memphis in May, and we thank you so much for joining us for Revival Memphis, the Memphis in May Founders Story. We hope you found this program enlightening today. We'll be back in the month of May with some more celebration of this great story. Thank you for watching.